Hello and welcome to episode 1188 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, June 19th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by Justin Mason. Justin, good day, sir.
Good. It is afternoon for me. How you doing,
Yes,
buddy?
I'm doing well. How about yourself? I know, this is something I didn't know, but we're going to peel the curtain back. I didn't know your office was in the Oakland A's visiting press box,
It is. It
but
is.
it turns
Yeah.
out it is, or it's at least dealing with a similar issue. So,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
did you spend your weekend?
I apologize to everybody who was expecting a Sunday episode. I had a great Sunday episode lined up with Ryan Venasio, who I'm going to keep just like promoting until we get him back on the show. But I had to cancel because there was evidence of rats when I came into my office on Saturday, and therefore had to take everything out of my office. I have killed one of the rats. One has been avenged. I'm sure there are more. Whereas there's one, there's typically others. So, yeah, it was a really fun Father's Day weekend. Yeah, I apologize to those who are looking forward to Ryan coming on with me and Jason, but yeah, we'll get it figured out.
Yeah, understandable that you had to deal with all that. Hopefully, it isn't too crazy, but maybe talking some baseball will put you in better spirits here. We're gonna do a little bit different format. I feel like things been getting a little stale with just the two starts, just the pickups. When there is a Sunday episode, you guys are talking pickups. So yeah, we're you're talking before after waivers, we're talking after, but still, it's a little much. So we're still going to talk some key waiver guys, but in a different context. We're going to kind of break things down a little bit more into some different groups. Let's start with some top news and notes. First and foremost, Lars Nootbaar returning from the IL and already playing this afternoon. They had an early Monday game. You don't see that very often, but the Cards and Nats are already playing. In fact, the Nats up 1-0 on Jack Flaherty. Is this the beginning of a series or a wraparound?
I think it's the beginning of series.
It is the beginning. Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. An early Monday game, you don't see that often. Not as focused on that as I am Nootbaar returning. What do you think of Nootbaar coming back? Is he back in your lineup in all formats? Are you easing him back in? How are you playing it with Nootbaar, who had a 266 average, 4 homers and 5 steals, and 184 plate appearances before the IL?
I put him right back into my lineups
Me too.
where I remember to set things on time because I'm an idiot sometimes, and I've been just overwhelmed with crap. So literal rat crap. But yeah, I put him right back into my lineups. I'm interested to see how things play out over the next week or so in the Cardinals. Jordan Walker has been playing very, very well, and so you would assume he needs to keep playing. Um, but they only have so many spots for so many people. So I'm worried about guys losing playing time. When are we going to start seeing Donovan lose, a good portion of his playing time? When are we going
I
to
don't.
see?
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I
He's been
just, I,
playing a lot better lately. I
mm-hmm.
wonder if one of the two sub 300 OBP guys at the bottom, Paul DeYoung or Tommy Edman, maybe starting.
Edman is the one I'm worried about. The only thing about Edman though is he's at least been really good defensively,
True,
and
but they have
so
other guys for the outfield
yeah.
that can play those spots. So Dylan Carlson, Dylan Carlson's the odd man out today on Monday, if you're listening to this, with DeYoung, Edman, Nootbaar, Walker, all of them playing Donovan leading off. And Donovan's been leading off. And again, he's kind of back on track, at least to the level that you should have probably expected from Donovan. I was one of those that thought the spring power might yield some more pop. It hasn't really come to fruition during the regular season, but he's getting on
I mean,
base,
it
he's collecting
has. He's
hits.
got 6 home runs right already.
Early it was there.
It's still there. It's still that's more home runs than he got like all of last season, right? Like he had 5 home runs last year, so six.
I
He's already surpassed last season.
I understand that.
I know
That
you're
was
saying,
an
yeah.
early spurt, early right away, and I feel like it's kind of tapered off since then. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. I mean, sub 400 slug his first 2 months, 407 so far in 15 June games for Donovan. But the bottom line is he's playing like the guy that they believe they can trust. Last month, the last month of games, 306 average, 410 OBP for Brendan Donovan. So Nootbaar back near the top of the lineup, batting third. He's fully trusted. I put him back in everywhere. That was automatic for me. Big time performance this weekend. Pretty much highlights why both of us, as big believers of this guy, but why we've been so reluctant to fully quit Lance Lynn. That said, I wasn't blaming people for cutting him, for sitting him for sure, and or cutting him, depending on the league size. Like, there was a lot of reasons to be like, I guess it's just not coming together. So then, of course, as more and more cut him and his roster rate starts to dip, Lance Lynn goes out and drops 16 strikeouts with 30 swinging strikes, which I believe was a season high for baseball, an MLB season high. 7 innings, 3 runs, 4 hits, 2 walks with those 16 Ks. Of course, a loss, by the way. He took the loss for Lance Lynn. I know he was on a lot of your benches, but you still haven't cut him. And what does this do to change your interest in Lance Lynn going forward, I think is the biggest question at this point.
Why does Lance Lynn hate me?
And for all the support that you've given him, to do that on your bench is tough.
Yeah.
And now you're faced with the decision of, do you start him this week against Boston at home? Okay, you're going to take that one off. What if he goes out and does well against them? Then you got the Angels on the road next week. So the next 2 starts are very difficult matchups. What does this big start do for your Lynn love and whether or not you're starting him?
I still think he's like a team streamer in most formats. Like, I think I don't want to drop him to the waiver wire because we saw what he can do, and I don't want him to do that on other people's teams. But like, he's just so hard to trust, especially against good offenses. You know, while these next 2 starts aren't great, like, I'm starting him in a lot of 15s this week. You know, for against Boston, and then we'll kind of wait and see how I feel in terms of going against the Angels next week. But for the most part, like, he's gonna face more games against his division than anybody else, and his division sucks. And
True.
so I'm totally fine just kind of putting him on my bench for right now in a lot of 10 and 12 team leagues, and then kind of moving forward, just picking my matchups.
Get things off kilter by about 1 day anywhere here before next week, and Lance Lynn is facing Oakland in Oakland. So
yeah,
if we can get
pray for rain, baby.
a rain out or something, maybe just a little.
He went on the bereavement list today, so maybe
Lynn did.
Yeah, like literally right before we started recording.
That might not do it though, because and hopefully everything's okay. Obviously,
it's Fridays. It's like a Friday start. Yeah.
It's Saturday right now, so we'll see. But
take an extra day. Just to,
time.
come back on Sunday so I still get the start. But
take your time to deal with everything. Yeah, it's always tough. It's a 3-day thing too, so he'll be out for the Texas series. Not that he was going to pitch it anyway. Tanner Houck had a really scary situation, getting hit by a batted ball in the face that has now led to a facial fracture for Tanner Houck. They originally thought, okay, as these things go, not as terrible as they expected, but now on the IL with that facial fracture. We're kind of dealing in the dark right now with Houck. Are you holding him everywhere, Tanner Houck?
I don't think so. I don't think you need to. I mean, yeah, probably not. I think I'd probably move on. Maybe you wait, especially if you're in a weekly league where you only get pickups on Sundays anyways, you at least get to kind of wait and see if there's a little bit of news before Sunday. But as things stand at the moment, I don't think he's the guy that you necessarily have to hold onto in most formats.
Yeah, it's probably deep leagues only. I mean, the schedule hasn't really been kind lately, and it's been shown in the results for Tanner Houck since May 1st. Toronto, Philly, Seattle, the Angels, Diamondbacks, Rays, and Yankees twice, and he has a 5.40 ERA in that time. Now, he only has a 5.05 all told, so it's not like he ripped through the league in April. The schedule wasn't that much friendlier either. Baltimore, Detroit, Angels again, Minnesota, and Baltimore again. So he's had a rough one. That's probably part of why he has a 5.05 ERA. I like Tanner Houck in theory. I don't think we've fully seen it. 10s and 12s, I think it's a totally fair cut. You could have done it last night. In 15s, I am probably trying to hold, but if we don't get positive news this week, I do think that on Sunday, Houck would then become somebody that I would be okay cutting. This next guy, I definitely want to hang on to him. This is a huge bummer. Triston McKenzie had just come back and is immediately back to the IL with an elbow issue. This is scary. I mean, we know his health concerns have been massive coming up. He had the big breakout year last year, became somebody that people were really interested in. Returned for 2 starts, brilliant in his season debut, 1 hit of 5 innings of 1 hit ball with 10 strikeouts. Then gave up 5 and 5 against Houston. That was really a bad first inning, but still wasn't quite the same. Now he's back on the IL. What about Triston McKenzie? Are you holding him everywhere right now?
Anywhere that's got an IL spot for sure, at least until we get a little bit more information. But if you're in a roster crunch, I totally understand dropping him because like you said, usually these kind of situations ends up with a guy getting Tommy John. So I just worry that that's where this is headed anyways. And if you really need that roster spot because you're turning and burning or you don't want to take zero, I totally get just moving on.
Yeah, I wonder how much he was cut this weekend since this all took place on Friday and Saturday with regards to missing the start and then going on the IL. You talking 15s? You might cut him too, Triston McKenzie?
I mean, I would try to hold, but like if you're in a situation where you've already got like 2 or 3 guys on the IL that are sitting on your bench, like can you really afford to hold on?
Especially if they're short term or toward the end of their perceived, if you're holding on to somebody who's like on the way back, or maybe Nootbaar was part of your considerations and he's back today. Sure, that might clear a spot. But man, I don't know. It becomes difficult, and I do worry. And this was a guy, Triston McKenzie, again, that I loved. He was great for me last year as a on the rise type of guy. But once the premium went there, I think this is another guy that I kind of always want to buy on the downswing. It kind of reminds me of a little bit. It could be a Lance McCullers situation, where whenever he pitches, he's good, but you never really want to pay full price. So even when Triston McKenzie has those big seasons, you avoid the temptation of paying that top 30, top 25 price, just because it's not that he can't stay at that level. It's just that trusting his health is so difficult. So I'm a little tepid on the future for McKenzie right now with regards to the health. But if it ends up being an injury washout season and he's dirt cheap next year, you better believe I'll be buying at that point. So I think he's an always buy low type of guy, which means if you're in trade leagues, you might want to go out and buy right now. Edward Cabrera heading to the IL as well. This one's a bummer because he had really been starting to show some signs that, or at least on a run with his control. I don't want to say show signs that he was reining it in, because there's never really an indication that Cabrera's control is getting better. But he hadn't walked 4 for a while, which is something he does with some level of frequency. He'd only had 6 total walks in his last 3 starts combined, which is a 10% mark, 60 batters faced, which for Edward Cabrera is pretty good. And he'd been pitching well. Now he goes to the IL. Where do you stand with him? Because now this could open the door for Trevor Rogers to return, although he himself dealt with a setback. So you hold an Edward Cabrera.
No, I dropped Cabrera in a couple leagues.
Okay.
I mean, I held him where I kind of could and where, but for the most part, I dropped him. I wonder if this is more of a matter of like they didn't want to send down Yuri Perez and hey, it looks like Edward Cabrera. I think you need some time off, and so maybe it's a short-term thing until another opening opens back up, or just time to kind of give him a little bit of a break. But I don't know. Like I just the control issues are just too big of an issue for him. And he just becomes such a whip killer because he gives up so many free, bases via the walk. So I wish I hadn't drafted.
When he's that classic guy that we talk about a lot, where one bad start can really dump out, kill the effect of 3 or 4 good ones. And to wit, he had a 3-start run of a 2.16 ERA. Then you throw in his most recent start for Edward Cabrera at Seattle, 4 innings, 5 runs. It bumps those 4 starts up to 3.92, which is fine in deeper leagues, but it becomes a bit fringier in those shallow formats, particularly when it's paired with a 116 whip, which is not bad, by the way, especially for him because he was riding a hot 255 BABIP. But the whip is always lingering with Edward Cabrera. And so when he has those bomb outs, it really erases a lot of good work. 10s, 12s, easy cut. 15s, you're trying to hold Cabrera. But shallow formats, I'm moving on. This is a deep league only situation with Anthony Rendon, but he's back to the IL. Not a huge surprise there. He's been okay, nothing special this year. Are you holding him even in deeper formats? Let's say you're free and clear of injuries. Are you still just going to get a different player? or would you try to hold Rendon? He had a great May batting average wise, but April and the 8 games of June that he's played have sucked so far. So where are you at on Anthony Rendon right now as he heads back to the IL?
I mean, outside of AL only, he shouldn't have been on your roster at this point. Like, I mean, he's got 1 home run and 2 stolen bases this year, and the only reason he has value is because he bats higher up on a very potent Angels team. They're better off with him on the IL.
I mean, he has not been good, and I'm a long-term Rendon lover. Yeah. But he's 33 at this point. I mean, he played 58 and 47
He's bad
games.
Defensively. Like,
yeah, I mean, he's a below average bat right now. The OBP is good at 366. His slug for Anthony Rendon is 50 points lower at 316. That's horrendous. 1 homer, 2 steals, easy cut everywhere. Probably shouldn't have been on many rosters. I agree. Let's do a little 3 up, 3 down. 3 guys up, 3 guys down right now. Gunnar Henderson. If you cut him early, you might be regretting it, and that's why it's hard to advocate too heavily for people to cut guys like this, even when it's a guy that I didn't quite love. It's like you paid this big price, and yeah, I know we talk all the time, sunk cost fallacy, whatever, but you kind of want to see it through more than some people were ready to do. They were cutting Gunnar Henderson, and now all of a sudden you look up in his last 20 games, 324 average, 1002 OPS, 6 homers and 3 steals. He looks like he's coming out of it big time. Is Gunnar Henderson here? And were you advocating cutting back in April or early May when things were really looking ugly for Gunnar?
I don't think I ever advocated cutting. I definitely advocated not drafting.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love paying the premium for him, but I didn't want that to influence me saying, like, cut this guy after a month, when I know I would not cut an 8th round pick after a month, even if the consensus didn't agree with my 8th round pick. I got to see it through longer. So I hope people held. Yeah. I know some of the shallower formats, Henderson was popping up on IL or on on waiver wires, for God's sakes. But now with this hot run, he's kind of in line with what he was supposed to do. He's got a 793 OPS now with 10 homers and 4 steals for the year. Where are you at on Henderson going forward now? You've seen the good, you've seen the bad. Where does he go from here the rest of the way? So 3.5 months left.
So this is a really interesting hot streak because, I mean, if you remember back to why I was out on Gunnar Henderson coming into the season, it was a large part due to the fact that he has struggled to hit lefties. And he did in the minor leagues as well. And so I was really worried about him being really good, when going up against a righty, but then when going up against a lefty, just being atrocious and then finding himself as a platoon player. Because while Baltimore, doesn't look rich of talent, they're going to be very, very soon. I wrote about it last week on Fantasy Pros. Like, at some point, they're going to start bringing up all these guys. They were tied for the second best record in baseball. I don't know where they're at after the weekend, but they're behind the Rays. But that's pretty much the only team they're behind in the American League. So, if you look at what he did versus lefties, last year 130 in the majors against left-handed pitching.
Damn. I mean, I know it wasn't a lot of plate appearances for Gunnar, but how many did he have against lefties?
It was just 20. It was just 26.
But that went in line with his minor league struggles against lefties.
Exactly. So March, April, he 0.95 versus left-handed pitching in 28 plate appearances. In
Is that
May,
OPS or average?
That's his average.
Okay.
His OPS was 417.
Still pretty horrendous.
In May, a little bit better, but still 176 average, 476 OPS.
Okay.
In June, now it's only 10 plate appearances.
Yeah.
So about half the number of plate appearances or a third of the number of plate appearances, for a full month against left-handed pitching. But 556 batting average, 1.156 OPS.
So he found some left.
Is it a hot streak? I mean, he does have like an insane 625 BABIP against left-handed pitching during the month of June in those 10 plate appearances. But it's at least signs of life. It's showing that he can hit the baseball against lefties. I'm very, very intrigued. I'm not ready to say like, hey, he solved this, because this could easily just be just a hot streak, But I'm very, very intrigued, and this is a very, very good sign. And yeah, there are leagues where people drop him, including 15-team leagues. He got dropped in my TGFBI league, and I missed out on him by $12. Even though, like, this is another one of those instances. I was not in on him draft season, but when
as
you
a
look at the
pickup.
waiver wire, yeah, you get him off the waiver wire, you go, okay, maybe he's an interesting pickup. So, yeah, I if he's available in your league, you should pick him up. I can't imagine he's available in very many.
No, I would hope that Gunnar Henderson is fully, back to being fully rostered. He's 90% at Yahoo, so there's at least 10% out there that might be dead leagues
That's
or
it.
whatever. But check your league because Gunnar's back to being needing to be on a team everywhere. Josh Naylor is an RBI machine. He has 38 ribbies in his last 38 games, averaging one per game. And the interesting part about that is a lot of that time was spent not really producing much around it for Josh Naylor. He was just making sure he was kind of getting those ribbies in. But now lately, he's ticked up the production as well. This month, though, 15 games, he's hitting 387 with 13 ribbies in 15 games. No homers. He did have 5 last month, though, and 3 the month before. So 8, we've seen kind of the requisite power from Josh Naylor. He basically just looks like last year's guy, if not a bit better, with a ton of ribbies and 5 steals in 63 games, which is nice. Is Josh Naylor somebody that that deserves more credit for what he's been doing lately? And we'll talk about his brother later, by the way, who was called up. But he's 80% rostered at Yahoo. Should that not be 100% for Josh Naylor? Is he underrated right now?
I mean, kind of the exact same analysis from the Gunnar Henderson. Like, he's the guy who's atrocious versus left-handed pitching, and we always kind of felt like, oh, Cleveland's just going to not put him against left-handed pitching, but they have been. And I don't know if it's because they just don't have any other really good options because it's such a, shallow team in general. But he started to hit against lefties the last 2 months. Not nearly like Gunnar Henderson level or anything like that, how Henderson's been doing. But at least holding his own, hitting 267 this month versus lefties and 263 last month. And so I think we're starting to see, hey, like they're playing against lefties and he's holding his own, which is a really good sign because he gets full slate of plate appearances and all of a sudden he's a really, really interesting, bat that is dual eligible in some leagues. So, yeah, I mean, I like Naylor. I can't believe he is still that low rostered. I know 80% is still high, but 20% of leagues should. I mean, I guess it could be leagues where like you don't have like the CI, and 3 outfielders.
But
so
8 homers, 53 ribbies, and 5 steals for Naylor with a good average. I don't know. I feel like it should at least be on the rise then, because you're talking that's a 21. I guess it's a 21 homer, 13 steal pace, which isn't killer, but 136 on the ribbies is kind of nuts. His runs are down, though. It shows you that Naylor is driving plenty in, but then they're not driving him in because he's only pacing for 64 runs right now. But he's definitely doing well. What's going on? Breaking news.
Jack Flaherty sucks.
Oh, yeah. Well, we knew. I don't know if that's breaking news.
My main event team's never going to recover its ERA. It's just like,
I think that's just news. So what's the score? 5-0.
5-0. And kind of just getting BABIP to death a little bit. Like
that's how Washington beats you because we've talked about a million times. They never strike out, and in Flaherty's credit, at least early, he's not walking anybody, but their hits are just falling. 8 hits in an inning and 2/3 for these 5 runs, and that's exactly it. When you lose to Washington, it's usually because you're getting BABIP'd to death, and that's how it can go against them.
Maybe Josiah Gray can just keep pitching well, so I can at least get a win out of Jack Flaherty screwing me.
With a 5-0 lead, it would be really tough to lose a Josiah Gray dub.
Our
last 3 up here, and then before we go to 3 down, is Eddie Rosario. Dude is absolutely out of his mind in June with 8 homers and 19 ribbies in 14 games. His season line is nice. Am I remembering correctly that he got his eyes fixed this offseason?
That was a couple seasons ago.
Oh, okay.
I think he's had multiple. I mean, I think he's had multiple eye surgeries.
Well, if he got one this offseason, it took a couple minutes to click. And by a couple minutes, I mean 2 months, because he had sub 700 OPS totals in April and May with 5 homers and 18 ribbies between the 2 months. But then, like I said, this month, 8 homers already and 19 ribbies. So he has almost 2x as many homers as he did all season coming into this point, and he's more than doubled his RBI total. What's up with Eddie Rosario, and is this not a great opportunity to get into a really good lineup via the waiver wire in shallow leagues? Because Rosario's only 28% rostered at Yahoo. Do you believe in what Rosario's doing right now?
Yeah, so Rosario got his eye procedure at the end of April of last year.
Okay.
So it wasn't this year. He did have an off-season surgery. I can't remember what it was, though. And that's one of the reasons why he started the year on the IL and I think was a little bit slow going. But, I mean, you got to love what Rosario's doing. It's hard to believe that he's necessarily going to keep it going because, I mean, for the season, he's got like a pretty low zone contact score. I'm looking at over what it's been. Hey, for the month or for the last month or so, it's about league average. Only problem is he is swinging outside the zone a ton, so I do think that there's going to be strikeout issues that kind of aren't being shown right now. But he isn't getting unlucky, or he isn't getting lucky on base on balls. He's making a lot of contact. I think he's just one of those guys who, and this is who Rosario has always kind of been. He's a streaky guy. He sees the ball well for a few weeks and then is murdering it, and then all of a sudden he misses it. But he's always going to be aggressive. He's rarely going to walk very much. Yeah. And so you're going to kind of ride hot streaks, and then when he goes cold, you're going to kind of drop him. But I think right now you ride it. I mean, he's got home runs in 4 straight games, 5 total in the last 4 games. You
Love
just enjoy it while it's here.
There was some chatter about Rosario's eye situation in spring. Mark Bowman of MLB.com had reported that his vision issues are now completely resolved. That was on February 26th. So whatever the adjustment period was, I don't know if there was a tune-up surgery or anything like that. It just says that as of late February this year, he felt like he was really clicking with the improvements to the vision. And of course, they didn't really click in the first 2 months of the season, but now this 3rd month here, he's blazing hot. So I do think it's a good way to get into a good lineup. I know they've been sputtering a little bit lately, have the Braves, but Eddie Rosario as a waiver pickup, I think you jump in right now, you ride it in those shallow formats. And if he comes back down to earth in a big way, you cut him. And I don't think it's that big of a deal if you want to do that with Eddie Rosario. Let's go 3 down. Let's start. All 3 could have been on this same team, but I bunched them together here. New York Yankees, guys. 3 of the 4 worst WRC totals in the last 30 days are Yankees. Anthony Volpe, DJ LeMahieu, and Anthony Rizzo. Let's start with whether or not you're cutting any of those 3 in deep formats right now. Rizzo, LeMahieu, Volpe, any of them leaving your roster in a 15-teamer?
I dropped DJ LeMahieu in Tout this week.
It's probably the one that I could get on board the most.
And it was hard because LeMahieu's usually like an on-base percentage kind of asset, but he hasn't been this year. And
291 OBP.
Yeah, I mean, he's been killing me. And luckily for me, I also had Brendan Donovan on that team. And so, like, I didn't need the flexibility. And so I just, with Cody Bellinger coming back, somebody else coming back on that team, I went like, okay, I got to drop a couple guys, and LeMahieu is one of the 2. So, yeah, I have no problem dropping any of them at this point, really. I think I would prefer, if I'm going to keep one of them, I think it's probably Rizzo.
Not
just
Volpe?
Because I believe
he's still got fantasy juice. Like, I know it's 189, right? You don't want guys hitting near Paul Spore's body weight, but
Keith Law wrote a really good piece, I think, on The Athletic. I think that's where Keith is still writing, where he talked about Volpe, and I agree with him. He thinks Volpe is just overmatched, and that the Yankees while the Yankees aren't necessarily going to send him down because he plays good defense and he can at least steal bases, like, he is just overmatched right now and needs to go back down to learn how to hit, especially breaking stuff. So
they finally took him out of the 1 spot.
Yeah.
It just seems like 22 games wasn't enough at AAA. Are they being stubborn, or is it the shortstop need? Because I'm wondering
I think
why
they're being
Peraza.
stubborn.
Yeah, because shouldn't Peraza's already the better defender. So why
They've also got Isaiah Kiner-Falefa still there, and Falefa's actually been playing really well
I know.
as of late. So like, I think they're being stubborn. I think they're looking at this kid like, hey, he's the future. We don't want to send him a bad message.
I think
That
that's
like we don't
part of it.
and so like I think they're saying, hey, you're an elite prospect. We believe in you. You're going to hit your way through this. And oh my God, no, Victor Robles, you got to catch that ball. Not now. John Gray's being BABIP to death.
Josiah.
Sorry,
yeah.
Josiah Gray. Yeah.
The new pod feature is doing an episode with you.
Oh, Victor Robles is hurt.
One of your starters. Oh no, not Victor. So no, with regard to Volpe, I agree. They're letting him play through it. You know, last month he hit 174 in May, but 6 homers, 5 steals. So you're still getting a little bit of that fantasy juice. And like I said, 9 homers, 15 steals on the year. But at what cost? I guess, you know, I'm not even saying that I would still be starting him in 15s. I think you have to hold on to Volpe just in case. Maybe not, though. Maybe I hold too much. But I see 9 homers, 15 steals.
I held on to him in the one spot where I got him, and I picked him up off the waiver wire in a 15-team league.
Oh wow!
And I've held on to him for now, but
243 BABIP, by the way.
I also understand wanting to drop him and doing so. Like I just
31% Ks playing into that BABIP issue, right? And if he's overmatched, you don't just look at a BABIP and say, "Oh, Volpe will push up because this BABIP's too low." 243 is pretty darn low. I think a bad BABIP from somebody who's struggling could probably be more in like the 265, 275 range. So maybe there's some regression to that level, but all the strikeouts are a problem right now. 31% rate for Volpe.
Volpe's XBA is 224. Maybe we would be feeling a little bit better if he was in 224.
If it started with a 2, I think people would at least be feeling a bit better, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we kind of hoped he would be hitting my body weight, not your body weight.
Yeah, exactly. But alas, that's where it is with him. And then Rizzo, you mentioned he's the one that you'd want to keep around the most because his struggles are pretty recent. He started off brilliantly. Yeah. In fact, even being one of the worst guys over the last 30 days, his season line is still a 113 OPS plus with 11 homers because Rizzo started off brilliantly. So I think this is just a cold streak. It's like aggressive regression. Like we knew that he would smooth out from where he was, but the league is just, baseball gods are just taking all of the regression out at once. And so he's hitting 083 with a 108 BABIP here in June. And that's what that feels like there. So I agree with you. No move on Rizzo. You can cut LeMahieu in just about any format. I'm okay cutting Volpe in shallower leagues if you have to. I'm trying to hold in 12s and up just because the fantasy heat is there.
I think like the question you have to ask yourself with Volpe is like, are you okay seeing him on someone else's team? Like Correct. It's like, like it's not so much like what he's doing for your team, but are you okay? Because he will get picked up
for sure.
Immediately. Like you mentioned, the fantasy juice is just too good.
Yeah. So will it kill you for him to do anything on somebody else's team and maybe figure out to hit like 230 the rest of the year with the power and speed? Because that would be enough. I think he really only needs to be hitting like 225, 230 to be a fantasy beast for Volpe because of the power and speed.
And if he's hitting 230, I mean, the Yankees apparently will lead him off. So
yeah, exactly. They'll probably put him back up to number 1. Casey Schmitt, this is a deeper league one. Casey Schmitt was not really ever super shallow viable, but he had 11 hits in his first 5 games. He has just 23 in the 30 games since. Good for a 213 average. Should he still be rostered in 76% of main events?
I don't think so.
The Giants, by the way. Sorry.
I dropped him in a number of 12-team leagues this week, so I don't think.
I think that number surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I think people just hold on. I also think you're going to start seeing a roster crunch for the Giants. I mean, JD Davis has been banged up, so they brought up David Villar, but Davis also hit a grand slam over the weekend, so he's not going to the IL or something. And at some point, they're going to have to kind of figure out what they're going to do with the rest of this infield because all their guys are pretty much healthy on the infield and not necessarily the outfield. And the only reason I think Schmitt is even still up is because he plays so well defensively.
Yeah,
But I don't know that that's going to hold. So he also got hit by a pitch. I wouldn't, and had to leave the game eventually on, I think it was Sunday. So I think there's a chance he even hits the IL today.
Well, let's hope that he's okay. But yeah, if not, then he should probably hit your waiver wire pretty soon. Casey Schmitt was kind of a ride the lightning sort of thing. And I think sometimes, especially when you start off that hot, because when you get 11 hits in your first 5 games, that can carry you for a while. Because even though he only ended up hitting 254 for the rest of May, which was another 17 games, his May average was 325. 5 games in a 20-game sample, or I think it was 22 games in May, can really pump up the sample. But now we're starting to see it come down. He's hitting 266, 286, 383. That's a really bland line that doesn't even have value in deep leagues. I'm cutting Casey Schmitt everywhere. Our last down here on 3 Up, 3 Down is Dodgers rookies. And again, I cheated here and I used one spot for 2 players, but James Outman and Miguel Vargas here. James Outman, 189 average, 2 homers, 3 steals since May 1st. He had a big April that really carried him. In fact, still has him as a plus bat overall. Another guy with fantasy juice, 9 homers, 7 steals. But is he being overrated because of April and being a Dodger? He has a 552 May OPS, 633 in June. Where do you currently sit with James Outman?
I mean, he is who we thought he was. Like this is like you saw like the hotness that started off the season, and people were taking victory laps on him. And I'm pretty sure like 2 or 3 weeks into the season, I wrote an article that you should sell James Outman right now because the value was never going to be higher. And
especially because of hot Dodger.
Prospect. Yeah, and like he was that deep league sleeper that everybody was talking about, including me. But you have to capitalize on those guys because this has always been his profile. Outman is a guy who just swings and misses way too much. When he's connecting, you're going to get like a lot of fantasy goodness because there's power and speed, but there's a huge downside. The problem is for the Dodgers is they don't have the bodies that they used to send him down. Because I think if this was last year, he'd be in the minor leagues right now. But they just don't have that depth that the Dodgers historically do. I
call up.
I think Outman's going to be fine. I think he's one of those guys in Roto that you look at the line at the end of the season and go, wasn't amazing, but it was pretty darn good considering where you got him, which was probably off the waiver wire in most formats. But in head-to-head leagues, he's going to be really frustrating because, like, when playoff times come around, are you going to trust him in your lineup in a head-to-head format? I don't know that I would want to. So I totally understand moving on from head-to-head formats where he can just absolutely crush you in a week.
Yeah, I think that is scary with Outman, and I like that you bring up the distinction between head-to-head and Roto leagues. You're probably going to end up with like a 2020 type season, which, you're going to like in Roto, but those bad weeks can really get you, and you can probably find an outfielder that is a more stable pickup for him in some of the shallower formats. So I don't really want to cut Outman. I think in a 10 I could definitely do it, especially like a 3 outfielder 10. But anything with 5 outfielders, I'm still trying to hold him, even if I'm reserving James Outman a bit. But Miguel Vargas is a different story. He's the 34th second baseman this year, and he's still 100% rostered in the main event. And I'm just trying to figure out why so much deep league love for him. Miguel Vargas has 6 homers, 3 steals, and a 210 average. What's the deal here? Why should he be at 100% in the main event? That's 15-team mixed leagues.
I wonder if Miguel Vargas, and this is a bummer because I love Miguel Vargas. I wonder if he's just a better real life player than he is a fantasy player.
At least right now, he's 23, right? There's plenty to be written about him. But at this juncture, I just don't know how you're keeping a sub 700 OPS with no power or speed juice and a bad batting average. Yeah, he's on the Dodgers and he's an interesting rookie that was a big time prospect, but I was stunned to see that Miguel Vargas was still 100% at the main event. Now, only 40% started, which, okay, that's an improvement, but 100% rostered, that surprised me.
I mean, I kind of understand why, because he's eligible at first and second in most formats.
So you get the
Um,
MICI.
you get the MICI. He's like a great bench guy. The
Mhm.
underlying skills say his numbers should be better. He's got an 88% zone contact, and for context, league average is around 85%. So he's above league average in zone contact. There is some power, there is some speed. He plays on the Dodgers. At least earlier in the season, I think they were batting him a little higher. I guess he's batted mostly fifth, sixth, seventh, mostly seventh, eighth, or sixth, seventh recently. So I understand why he's rostered, but I don't think he needs to be rostered in any format at this point.
That's kind of where I'm at. Is just like, do you really need to be holding Miguel Vargas?
I mean, I guess I think the hard part in 15 team leagues is who you dropping him for. Let
me find you some names and see if I can appeal to you with.
Especially if you're looking for a guy who's multi-position eligible at corner middle, those guys are very few and far between. Available in 15.
Doing anything for you? First, second, third, 3 homers, 5 steals, hitting 242, so 32 points better than Vargas.
Yeah, but I think he's been pretty cold as of late too, right? And he plays on the Brewers.
Yeah.
And has the propensity to be a short side platoon guy.
He had a rough week last week after a good one the week before, which got him picked up a bunch. I think we talked about him on a pickup show. Let's see here. Well, Zach Neto's on the IL, so that doesn't work. You make a fair point here about the pickup options being scant, because as I'm looking around, I'm like, yeah, these guys are pretty crummy. Let me narrow it to 50.
Because you put a guy like Vargas on your bench, and then you need one less reserve hitter, right? Because you can,
True.
He's now covering, first, second, middle corner. You go, okay, now if my CI was already a third baseman and my MI was already a shortstop, now I don't need to have that extra body on my bench. I can add I could stash a pitcher. I could stash an outfielder. I could have 2 outfielders. I can go a lot of different directions now with my bench because of it. So I understand why. But again, I don't think he needs to be. It's just who you're picking up.
Jace Peterson or Miguel Vargas in a deep league?
I think I still want Vargas. Jace Peterson still plays on the A's. I can understand it. I did pick up Jace Peterson in a league where I was like, oh, he's multi-position eligible. He's been hot as of late. Yeah, fine, But I don't think there is that big of. I don't think there's I think that's kind of trading
neutral. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you're getting the guy on the worst team, so keep Vargas with the upside. Sure.
in the worst part, yeah.
I think the lack of pickups sells me on keeping Vargas a bit more in the main event and explains that 100% roster rate to me a bit more.
But in 10 and 12 team leagues, he should not be rostered.
He's not rostered nearly that much. At Yahoo, since I have it pulled up, let me look real quick. And I'll ask you for rest of year. This isn't a pickup situation. 31% at Yahoo. That's fine.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. But for rest of year, regardless of format, any format where you would roster these guys, do you like Brendan Donovan or Miguel Vargas better?
Donovan, I think.
Me too. Four positions, first, second, third, and outfield.
Yeah.
Also on a good team. He is batting hot. Or not. They've been terrible. I still don't think they're a terrible team, but they have been terrible thus far. So I can't say that the Cardinals are a good team. Sorry, Freudian slip there, because they usually are. You can usually just say good team with the Cardinals, and you're usually correct, but not in this case. Okay, so that's 3 up, 3 down. Weekend waivers. We are going to get into some of the guys that were picked up across the different formats. We talked about this guy a bit when he was called up, Luis Matos. Were you able to get any Luis Matos? Well, how did things go with your pickups and Matos before we get into exactly what the 21-year-old was able to do this week? I mean, he did hit pretty well, didn't strike out, but didn't put a bunch of fantasy heat out there in 4 games. So where were you? Did you pick him up anywhere, Luis Matos?
I did not. My money went to a different type of player that we're not going to talk about today. So I guess I'll mention it. I picked up closers. I got 2 closers off the wire in some leagues.
I meant to put Jordan Hicks on. Who was the other one that you got?
Kendall Graveman.
Was Jordan Hicks the other one?
Yeah, Jordan Hicks was the other one.
So you got Hicks and Graveman. Those would be the 2. I forgot to do closer stuff.
I didn't even need closers in my auction league where I think 7th overall. At least I was before.
Too
just
prepared,
I agree.
though.
And I got both Jordan Hicks and Liam Hendricks for $69 a piece.
Nice. Because the second that you think you're set in saves, you lose one of your guys, right?
I'm starting 4 closers in that league this week.
I don't blame you.
I'm like, hey, I'm gonna drop my ratios. I'm gonna build a lead in saves, and then I'm gonna play the matchups. It was either that or like Michael Kopech versus Texas, and holy crap! Okay, that was a foul ball. I thought Wilson Contreras just took Josiah Gray deep, but it went foul. Yeah, I started 4 closers in that league. So we'll see how that works out.
We'll see how that goes. Matos was super affordable, I will say. At least in my leagues, I didn't see him going for obscene prices. 51 out of 1,000 with a 31 backup. I got no problems paying that for him. I was worried that, and we talked about this in the episode where we brought him up, that Matos being kind of the guy in a week where there wasn't a big standout, would he get overrated? And in some leagues he did. I saw him go some pretty big triple digit bids that I thought were maybe
he went for like 180 in a league of mine.
And like the highest main event one is Zach Waxman, who we know did pace 178, but to his credit, 148 was the backup, so he needed to go pretty high if he wanted him. It's not like it was 178 with a 42 backup. So I'm looking here, and there were like eyeballing it about 12 or 13 of the 53 main events where Matos went for 100, and then the bulk of them kind of lived in that 50 to 99 range. But then another decent handful were under 50 as well. So it's interesting too, just to bring him up since I brought him up at the top end. Zach Waxman got the top bid at 178 to 148, and then he's the third lowest winner as well at 26 to 19. So it's interesting that he, whatever in his league, and he does so much data analysis, he probably knew exactly to the penny what people would bid, but he was able to be super high when he needed to, because he needed at least 149 to win that one. And then on the low end one, $26, he was still able to win that. I always find that unique when somebody gets a guy multiple times at vastly different bids like that. So that's Luis Matos. We expect average. By the way, I meant to bring this up when we were talking about Casey Schmitt. Do you want to offer like any sort of apology? Have you had to revoke your fandom? Because as recently as last week, you're talking a lot of shit about your favorite team here that's now 39 and 32, 3.5 games out and ahead of the Dodgers. So I'm just wondering if you have any sort of repercussions for your behavior.
It's so funny because like people who follow me that are Dodgers fans are like, you're such a homer. You're always hating on the Dodgers. And like, I feel like I am way more critical of my team than I am of any other team. And my wife will tell you that she has drawn up papers to divorce me on multiple occasions. It was great watching them sweep the Dodgers. That was,
sick was that?
Like that was like foreplay like you wouldn't believe. I hope my Giants are good. You know what the awful part about this is this is going to be the same thing as the last few seasons, where they are going to do just well enough
to not
sell the pieces they should be selling, and they'll either stand pat or maybe make some minor moves, and then they'll miss the playoffs. And
this feels like more like 21, though. I don't know. This feels more like, we talk about Cardinals devil magic all the time. Y'all got devil magic too, and everything's like that offense is clicking well now. That y'all rank top 10 in OBP, OPS,
and the bullpen is the best. The bullpen
is out of its mind. That's been the major key. Because the rotation is underwhelming outside of Webb, and yet it's supplemented beautifully by that bullpen right now that is absolutely cooking. So
I'm also going to have to grow out my playoff beard, which is always a fucking nightmare in Northern California when you're growing out a months-long playoff beard in a place that's gonna hit like 120 at some point this year. And
good luck with that.
I already told my wife, I was like, oh yeah, I wasn't planning on doing that this year, and she's all like, you are doing that. You do not have a say in the matter. And
that's funny how you thought you had control over whether or not you were going to do that. That was adorable.
It's a bunch of bullshit.
But yeah, well, a bunch of bullshit is the way you talk about your ball club. You should put some respect on their name because they're
Apparently,
playing really well again.
it's scaring me because I bet on the Diamondbacks to win the division, and now like it was like, oh, the Dodgers aren't what they used to be. The Padres weirdly suck, and now my team is the team I'm worried about.
Well, you can go for them without having to, like, you can root for your team knowing that your backup, or vice versa. You can go root for the Diamondbacks bet to come through. Hopefully, the backup is that your team wins it. The way you would get whipsawed, though, is that the Dodgers would come back and win the division. So you lose your bet, and your favorite team doesn't win it. So that part would be
probably will happen. Yeah,
I had instant FOMO on this guy on the waiver wire yesterday. I put him and a teammate of his at the exact same price. I would have gotten either, whoever I had at the top. I chose to go Edward Olivares over Samad Taylor. And I got to say, at like 9:02, I had FOMO for not flipping those two because
that's the right call.
I love Olivares, right? We've talked about him so many times these last few years as he's been jerked around, but now he's finally playing. And I'm not mad about getting him. I'm worried, and Rob Silver put this comp out earlier today, and this was exactly what I was thinking was I think there could be a little John Birdie-esque run, pun intended there with regards to the run, from Samad Taylor, who had 34 steals in AAA. And I know Darren Blanco was a guy who came up and we were like, he stole 1 million bases in the minors, but he's a 30-year-old journeyman. He's more Terrence Gore than anything else. But Samad Taylor can hit a bit. He had a 123 WRC plus, 6 homers, 34 steals in AAA. Comes up, gets a walk-off hit in his first 2 games here. Might he be a speed game changer? You said that you don't think I made the wrong move, but I kind of was bumming that maybe I should have gone for him to try to get a ton of steals as opposed to Olivares, who's going to give me a bit of everything type of guy. What do you think of Samad Taylor?
I haven't looked at Samad Taylor's like Statcast data from the minor leagues, and I probably should do that before saying what I'm about to say. But I like to live dangerously. I like people who are listening to like tweet at me and call me mean names and put mean comments in the show notes or in the reply section of the post for this. So feel free to do that. Samad Taylor feels like the guy that is going to get eaten up because they're just going to throw it right down the middle and dare him to hit it.
He might. He damn well might. That's possible. Yep.
And Olivares is a damn good hitter. I love Edward Olivares.
I do too. I mean, this is like my 3rd time picking him up in this. I drafted him and I picked him up twice.
Could Samad Taylor be that guy that is John Birdie-esque? Yeah, sure. Like, I mean, he's got speed. We know he can run, and we know the Royals like to run. We know the Royals get creative with their lineups, and they should get creative because this lineup sucks.
It stinks out loud, man. It is rough.
Yeah, and they've got holes. What wasn't it like a week ago we were talking about Darren Blanco as the guy?
Yeah, that's what I said. But he's more Terrence Gore, I think. Because, again, he had 47 steals. I undersold Blanco. He had 47 steals, and I guess he, too, was hitting in AAA. He had a 136 WRC plus. But he strikes me as more of like the pinch runner type because he's 30-year-old Darren Blanco, whereas Taylor, I think, is more of a prospect. But maybe you've assuaged some of my concerns there. I understand that there's a low chance. First off, putting anybody as this year's birdie, we do this year's whatever. Yeah. I would never make that a running thing, right? That is again, pun intended there with the running. But that would be an impossible one to try to nail. This year's Cedric Mullins, or as Vlad does with the Yelich, like those are ones you can come up with some things that make some sense there in a way to highlight players. But it's really hard to come up with something that's like this year's John Birdie. That's such a once in a, not lifetime, but once every 5-6 years type of thing that I don't think you're really eyeing anybody. But I just think Taylor, if he got going, could run wild for the Royals.
And maybe this is a little bit of confirmation bias, right? Because, I'm always looking for that. But, Eric Longenhagen did his top 47 prospects in the Royals system. It dropped less than a month ago. It dropped on May 27th. There was not a single mention of Samad Taylor.
Okay.
Like,
so no love.
Longenhagen doesn't think he's a top 47 prospect in that system.
Wait. That's last year's. This year's isn't out yet.
Oh, okay. Well, he wasn't in the last year's.
He
Or no,
wasn't in last year's.
he was in Toronto's last year's
Oh,
because he
that's
was
right.
part
That's
of the
right.
Toronto system. Um,
So yeah, the Royals one is not out yet. Let me see if any other sites put him in the Royals top, 20 or 30 or whatever. Because I didn't think Blanco had hit that well in the minors, Darren Blanco. So that's why I thought there was a little bit of difference between them. But it seems like both of them really did cut up AAA before coming up. He was 19th in MLB.com's Royals list. Samad Taylor was with a 60 run and a 50 field and 50 arm, kind of carrying him, 45 hit, 45 power. So again, we don't have to go too much further
he was
on him.
33rd last year on the Toronto
or on the Jays.
on the Jays list. I don't know, like to me, and I'm looking to see what Eric said about him, but he's measures much closer to a Malik Smith, Richie Martin kind of player.
There you go.
So like, I don't know, like I guess, but decent defensively.
Hey,
so and
John Birdie is that type of player too. That's all.
Sure.
I'm saying. Like John Birdie was that guy before.
Yeah,
he
like I
became
said,
something special.
Could it happen? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? I would much rather bet on Olivares because we could be a week or two from now and Kyle Isbell comes back and all of a sudden Samad Taylor's back in AAA, stealing all the bases off the crappy catching in AAA that he wants.
Or Olivares is. I hope not though. I do think Olivares would hold over. I feel
like Olivares should never be optioned again. Like I feel like
I think he's been optioned enough for a career. I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. But we'll see if that happens. More of a shallower pickup because this guy's been rostered in deep formats for quite a while. But Leody Taveras finally picking up a bit more in the shallower formats and still has some availability, I might add. But at 42% rostered on Yahoo. And I wonder if that's coming up a bit shy for what Leody Taveras has been, even after a surge. 42% feels a bit light. 8 homers, 7 steals, 302 average on a great team. Is Leody still a pickup in shallow formats, given that his roster rate is still pretty low after a wave this week?
I think so. There's no worse feeling than I mean, there are worse feelings, but one of the worst feelings in fantasy baseball is like setting your lineup in a weekly league and then watching the guy on your bench just absolutely tear the cover off the ball. And that was the feeling for me in Tout Wars last week, where I had Leody Taveras on the bench, and
crazy.
He just absolutely crushed it. 333, 375, 667 with 3 home runs and 2 stolen bases on my bench.
That's pretty decent.
Yeah, that's
pretty decent. You would have liked those numbers in your lineup. Call me crazy.
Yeah, I would have.
I think you would.
It went really well in my auction league where I had Kyle Bradish, Jose Suarez, and Lance Lynn on my bench. Or not Jose Suarez, Ranger Suarez on my bench. Yeah, it was a really good week for my bench in a lot of different leagues. And
those stats don't count.
Yeah, no, unfortunately they do not. Yeah.
It seems unfair that they're not counting those, but alas, they're not. So that's a bummer for you. But I like Leody. I definitely think, we've talked him up for a decade now, it seems like, even though that's not possible. Yeah. But I really do like him, and I do think that he could be pretty nice for shallow leagues. And I do think a roster rate below 50%, even in a 3 outfielder, no CI, MI to take some extra outfielders, off the outfield. I still think Leody Taveras should at least be on your bench. He's on a great team, and he's playing very well right now, and he is the 22nd outfielder in baseball thus far. So, from fantasy standpoint.
And I think he's one of those guys, too, he's very much, similar to Adolis Garcia in the fact that he's a really, really, really good defender. And so that, even when he does struggle, he'll get to keep playing because he is such a good defender.
And he's a switch hitter, too, so it shouldn't put him into too much of a platoon risk either. So right now we're seeing Taveras do what we've been hoping he can do for a while. I think it can keep going at a pretty decent clip. I would have him rostered in all formats. Spencer
Yep.
Torkelson is also making some shallow league rounds. For a lot of the year, his underlying skills have been there to say, like, there should be results, but for whatever reason, the results just aren't there. They aren't there. Well, they're starting to come around. Had a big week last week, a big 3-homer week in the 7 games. Love to see that from Torque. He's kind of working his numbers up now. One of the downsides from a fantasy perspective is that he's really been tearing the cover off the ball against lefties. He has an 865 against them, but a 674 OPS against righties. But again, the underlying metrics have said that more results should be coming for Torque. So are you seeing him as a pickup in shallower formats? Do you have to have a CI? Is he a worthy util? I know it's probably a tough start as a starting first baseman in shallower formats, but where do you stand on Torque? Because he had a wave of pickups this week in the shallower realms. What do you think of him?
I've been torn on. I've got to write an article, like a buy low, sell high kind of article. I've been torn writing about him as a buy low guy because I just feel like he should be better, and I think he is starting to show signs of life. He's hitting the ball hard. His barrel percentage this month is almost at 17%, which is fantastic. I just don't know that
so many better at bats though too. Like
Yeah.
just watching him day to day, it's a total transformation from last year, anecdotally.
Yeah, the underlying numbers say he should continue to be better. I do have like this feeling like, and maybe it's a matter of like he was a 1-1, 1-1 draft pick, and he was one of the top prospects, if not the top prospect in baseball. Spencer Torkelson was, and maybe I'm just like part of my glasses are colored through the fact that he has not come anywhere close to living up to that hype, and that's unfair.
Yeah, I mean, but it's hard not to have that color. How you feel about Torque?
So I think he should be picked up at least in the short term and kind of see if he can keep it going. Because I think we talked about. I know I talked about this with Draft Cheat when he was on. But he talked about how the Midwest has experienced a lot of cold in a way that they're not that we haven't normally seen. So baseball hasn't traveled as far in places like Cleveland and Detroit, in the way that they're going to as the summer continues to warm up. And so guys like Torkelson will get an added benefit from that. So yeah, I think he is kind of a buy low guy. Maybe I will write him up today.
Yeah, I dig it with Torque, and I really think that he could continue to put up some numbers, and he has exactly, after yesterday's game, 700 plate appearances in the majors. And a loose cutoff before I even start to really make any noise about a guy is 1,000. So he's still a half season away from that. So, we basically got the rest of the year until he gets to that 1,000. And if he ends up having a big summer, well, then I think the outlook on him is going to be a lot better than it was coming into this year, where people were already ready to bury the 23-year-old Torque, which feels a bit premature. They're coming for
you. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It happened.
I swear I didn't do it. I was recording with Paul. You guys are all witnesses.
We do have video evidence that if the crime was committed in the last hour and 2 minutes, it wasn't you. Emmet Sheehan was a guy we talked about getting called up for the Dodgers, and we were a bit dubious on, is he going to stick? What's going to happen? And of course he goes out, has the gem to ensure that his prices go up. They seemed pretty fair, and because of the setback with Julio Urias, there are no guarantees that Sheehan can't stick around, and with Grove getting sent out, that opened up the door. You're going to be very upset very soon.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's a tie game. Brendan Donovan just hit a 3-run shot.
Oh, no.
Oh, we're closer than normal if you're already seeing it, by the way, because he hasn't even reached home for me yet. So our streams are a lot tighter today. But anyway, Emmet Sheehan. I'm sorry. 402 for Brendan Donovan.
At least Sheehan, Brendan Donovan's in my lineup.
You got him in time. I started him today, too. I had a little bit of a tough choice, but I went with him. Emmet Sheehan had the gem. Going to get a start this week. It is going to be either at the Angels or home to Houston, though, so it's not great. Were you in on the Emmet Sheehan bids? Because despite the big effort that he had, his prices weren't crazy in a lot of my leagues. He had some, big bids like everyone, like we knew he was going to in some leagues. But for the most part, he seemed pretty affordable to me, going under 100 in more leagues than not in the main event. Where did you wind up on Emmet Sheehan over the weekend?
I put in some keep them honest bids, but even I wasn't spending a lot of money this weekend except for on those closers. So I just worry that he won't be up in the majors for super long. I know the outing was really, really impressive, and my Giants are like the best team in baseball ever. But I don't know. I worry that his time in the majors isn't going to be super long. He doesn't have a lot of innings,
Who are they going to go
built
to,
up.
though? The Dodgers.
They've always fine guys.
True. Let me amend something, by the way. I made an egregious mistake earlier. All that chatter of Zach Waxman buying Luis Matos, those were Emmet Sheehan bids. So same principles apply. That impressed me that he was able to get him for 178 to 148 in one league, and then 26 to 26 to 19 in another league. That range is still cool, but that was all Emmet Sheehan stuff. Zach Waxman is not that big on Luis Matos. So pardon me on that. I just want to get that correction out there with regards to putting somebody's name to a player. I don't want him to be associated with a player that he has no interest in. So anyway, Sheehan, you're concerned about the long term, but what about short term? He was going, like I said, under 100 in most formats, and that's a fine pickup you don't need him to be more than a couple week type pickup. Are you worried about the short term performance as well?
It was a weird outing. 80% of the balls he put in play were in the air. Like he had a 13%.
This is going to get Kopecky, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
oh God, no.
Yeah, it's going to be another homer here from Goldie.
Oh my God,
it was fucking tattooed, dude.
That baseball had a family. I love that call. That
was such a great call. We're either going to have another Kopech here, or you should turn. I think people like watching you watch hearing you watch your pictures. So you can leave it on. I'll stop spoiling it, but that one was just tattooed. Anyway, I'm sorry. Emmet Sheehan, short term, the outing that he had, you were talking about it, saying it was kind of weird. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, it was 13% ground ball rate, 80% fly ball rate. I just worry that a lot of those balls are going to leave the yard at some point. And maybe that was just like he was trying to take advantage of Giants lineup that isn't super powerful normally, though it became super powerful later in the outing.
Right.
So they just beat up on the bullpen. Maybe it's one of those things where like even if he does lose a rotation spot, maybe he stays up and strengthens that bullpen, which has been really, really shaky this year. So, I as a short-term pickup, I totally understand it. I wasn't willing to go the amount of money I thought he was going to go for, and so I didn't end up with him anywhere. But I totally understand why people did, and there are going to be a lot of strikeouts. Like we definitely saw that. It is a very live arm. So, maybe I'm a little bit too low on him. I think I probably am. Yeah. No, and especially with Grove going out. Like, I think that is a really good point. Like, Grove going out, Urias isn't back yet. So even when Urias comes back, he could still hold on to a rotation spot. So, I think I am a little bit too low. I think turn me around a little bit.
The one thing I would say, though, that for your caution, so we'll balance our two takes here, is it's either the Angels on Wednesday or Houston over the weekend for Sheehan, and then it lines up to be at Colorado the following week. So either way you slice it, the next two starts look pretty tough unless you protect him and get him to that at KC at the end of next week, the week of the 26th. So it could be a little tough for Sheehan, but thankfully people's prices should keep it in check to where even if he doesn't go as well as you hoped, it shouldn't be killing you. Like, for example, in my league, he only went for 27. I couldn't even afford that, though, because A, I didn't need that much pitching, and B, I have no money. So even 27 at a fair price for Sheehan, I still really wasn't in the running there. And then the last weekend waiver we're going to talk about here is Garrett Whitlock. He's another shallow league guy who took a big jump up in roster rates across the shallow formats. Still only 36% at Yahoo, but took a big jump at CBS. Saw a little uptick at ESPN as well. Now up to 71% rostered at CBS. What do you think of Garrett Whitlock as a shallow format guy? Should he be closer to 100%? He's got a 4.38 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP on the year, but pitching a lot better of late. Are you buying into Garrett Whitlock?
Yeah, I can't remember where I wrote it, if it was Fangraphs or Fantasy Pros, but recently I made I made the comment in a write up of his where I said that he is going to be 100% rostered by the end of the summer,
I tend to
and
agree.
that like his stuff is just so damn good. I know like the results haven't been perfect yet, but like the slider's really really good, and he has just a presence on the mound that I really really enjoy watching. And I do think he's going to be kind of a guy that can help carry his staff. And so, like, if he's still available in your league, like, he should be rostered, I think, in every format. And the fact that he isn't, I think it's a mistake.
I think so too with Garrett Whitlock, and he had 2 bombs in his first 3 back in April. Five runs against Tampa Bay and Milwaukee. Both of those were on the road. A gem against the Angels, sandwiched in between those 2. Then he goes out for a whole month. Comes back on May 27th. In his 4 starts since then, he has a 3.13 ERA and a 1.13 WHIP. Tiny sample for sure, but we know that Garrett Whitlock has talent. He's got swing and miss capability. Even though the strikeout rate is relatively low right now at 21%, it's a 13% swinging strike rate, so I think that can go up for sure. Fully agree. All formats got to be much higher rostered than 31% at Yahoo. I think that
Oh,
is
yeah.
buying opportunity. 36%, excuse me. Something we don't have very often. We have a catcher corner, and you're dealing with a little bit of a conundrum right now, where in a league you have 4 catchers, 2-catcher format, and you have 4 viable catchers, but you can't trade one to save your life right now. And we're about to talk about 4 interesting catchers that have been getting picked up across the multiple formats. Do you think it's because this infusion of catching across the league, where we've seen a bunch of guys pop up, is preventing you from being able to trade here?
No, I think the people in my tout league are jerks. Not really, but for some reason they don't want to trade with me. And I don't know if it's
get ripped.
I don't know that I think it's just people just don't want to trade. Period. And I think this is an anomaly of industry leagues that people don't often talk about with trading, because we often, when we hear about trading in industry leagues, it's because of guys like Ian Kahn and Fred Zinke.
Yeah.
Because they love to trade, or it's because, and this is the reason why, it's because a trade happens that changes the context of the league, or someone seemingly takes advantage of another person, even though I don't think that really people are taking advantage. I think people just don't want to see something from both sides of a deal. And people get a lot of heat. And so when a bad trade or a trade that changes the context of the league goes down in an industry league, there's a lot of eyes on it, and people talk about it, and they make fun of one side. And so it makes people less likely to want to trade in the future. Because they don't want to get roasted publicly. Like, when that happens in your league, you may get roasted by your league mates, but you're not getting roasted by tens of thousands of people on Twitter, or, you know, or, in comment sections, or, people listening to the radio. And so I think that people are a lot less apt to trade in industry leagues because they're afraid of the feedback that they might get from Joe Schmo, who has no idea what the context of why they made that deal was. And so there are multiple people in this league that have crappy ass catchers that could benefit from Bo Naylor, or, well, Ollie Kirk went on the IL today, so he's one of the 4. But Danny Jansen, Gary Sanchez, like, I'll give you.
You have 2 of the ones we're going to talk about. That's great.
Yeah. I've got 2 of these, guys we're going to talk about, and I'd love to trade one of them, and no one will effing trade with me. And it boggles my mind, like, and it's not just the catchers. It's like, it's everything. Like, I've been trying to trade for power from Jeff Zimmerman, from Nick Pollock, from, and none of them will trade with me. And I have to assume it has to do with they don't want to have to hear about other people talking on their podcasts and getting ripped, and
I think there's some of that, and I also think that in general trading can be hard.
And that's but I don't even get answers back. I have these people's cell phone numbers. I know where they live.
I feel that. No, I'm just talking in general, though, and that's why I try, like in my chat and everything, to not just say, "Oh, trade somebody," because I'll say, "Hey, trade somebody if you can." I know that's hard, but absent that, then you can cut so and so or whatever. Because I know it can be hard to just say, "Oh, go trade." Not all home leagues are created equally. Some are trade. Some are filled with like 10 Zinkies and Cons. Others are filled with 10 guys who have made 10 trades in 25 years of the league type of deal. So
Yeah.
it can be difficult. But let's get into some of these catchers. You mentioned Bo Naylor. He's up. This one surprised me. He went triple digits in my league. Again, we're talking 15-team main event here. 2 catcher setup, but $131 or something? Yeah, $131 to a 17 backup. Went out and got your guy, sure, but nobody else was biting apparently. In fact, all 3 of the triple-digit bids that Bo Naylor went for in main events had double-digit backups. So 158, 131, 107. The backups were 51, 17, and 38. It seemed that every league really only had one Naylor person interested because most of the backup bids were markedly lower. You obviously have him on that league in a 2-catcher deep league format. What are you expecting out of Josh Naylor? We talked about his brother earlier. Or excuse me, we talked about Josh earlier. What are you expecting out of Bo, especially with Mike Zunino DFA'd, clearing the path for some PT?
Yeah,
for Bo?
I think that was the big thing because I think this shows that the Guardians are really showing a lot of faith in what they think Bo Naylor is going to do for this year because they DFA'd your
Zunino.
boy Zunino.
That jerk.
And I mean, so they don't have a backup plan. I mean, I guess they've got, I think, like Cam Gallagher. And David Fry. Is that who it is?
Yeah, nailed it. I saw him the other day. I was like, who's D Fry? I had literally no idea.
I mean, I looked at their roster earlier, so that's why I know. But otherwise, I would have. That could have been a congressman for sure.
That's such a House of Representatives guy. David Fry, are you kidding me?
Yeah, Louisiana's 3rd district. But
he did have a DUI, but he got over it and got elected. I don't know.
He got fried.
Stuff. He got Fry. We got to look into Fry. He's pretty rough out there. But Bo Naylor, big time prospect, has always been kind of a hitting catcher as opposed to a catching hitter, meaning that the hitting is the key there. He doesn't really catch that well, and that's probably why there was some concern about whether or not they're going to go with him that much because they really
value defense, or they really value the framing and the game calling, and that's where he's behind. And and so that's why I was really surprised they actually let him go.
I think
now. Because they're saying like this because it's not like Cam Gallagher's like a great game caller or anything like that.
Prototypical backup. Like he's as backup as backup gets as far as what Cam Gallagher could do. So it's Naylor's job. Is that enough to get you interested?
Yeah. I mean, I stashed him in Tout Wars. They've got a weird rule where when you pick up a guy, you have to play him the next week. Like he has to be in your lineup the week after. And so like I took a 0 at catcher so I could pick up Bo Naylor because I think that he is an impact power bat with some chip in speed. The question is like how bad will the strikeouts be? Is the average going to be an issue for him? But it's a catcher, so like I don't care that much. And I'm hoping that I can trade either him or somebody else, maybe to the guy who had been rostering Mike Zunino on his Tout Wars team all season long.
All right, we're not doing a call out corner. It's catcher corner here.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a lot of heat for like
you get. This was just.
I'm totally joking. I'm totally joking.
He's goofing.
This is a fantastic league of a lot of really good players.
It was a really. I sat in on y'all's auction, and that was a really fun.
It's a really great room. So.
Okay, so we like Naylor. We're going to end up ranking all 4 of these at the end for 1 catcher and 2 catcher formats. So a guy we talked about last week went out, had a great week, playing all but, hang on, it only goes back to Wednesday's game. Let me see exactly how much Yainer Diaz played, but he had a good week because I know he hit a couple bombs. And so going back to last Monday would have been the 12th. He played all but one, he pinch hit in one of them. So he started all but 2 games if they played on Monday. Sorry. But anyway, he played a bunch is the bottom line here. I should have had his playing time prepared here. But and he's starting today at DH batting 5th. And that's the thing, too. 4 of the last 5 starts for Yainer Diaz have come at DH. They are carrying 3 catchers. So Cesar Salazar can be Martin Maldonado's backup. I know I had to kind of sway you a little bit on Diaz's potential upside last week. He goes out, has a good week. Where are you at on him now? Is he one catcher viable, perhaps?
I think in maybe like a deeper one catcher league. Yeah,
like a
sure.
15-team league?
Yeah, I think a 15-team league, one catcher league. I picked him up in an OC. I dropped Blake Sable.
Yep.
Got him for $17 with no backup bid.
Dig it.
So I was pretty happy with that. So I think he's a guy that, like, as long as he's getting playing time, like, we know he can hit. And
another hitting catcher, meaning or catching hitter. I keep saying it wrong. Where the
question
is
becomes
the foremost thing.
If and when Jordan Alvarez comes back, like, how much playing time does he lose? Because he's benefiting from the fact that he can DH and play, some first.
What's he got to do, in your estimation, in the interim here to save that spot for Diaz? Because obviously when Alvarez comes back, he's going to play. Call me crazy. I think he's going to go back in the lineup. I'm being silly. So obviously,
I think they're going to be smart and not play him in the outfield.
And that's the thing too, is he's pretty much going to eat up that DH a lot.
Yeah.
Can Diaz get enough burn slotting in at first on occasion for Abreu, who has turned his bat around a bit, and being that backup catcher to where he's still 2C viable for sure for Diaz?
I mean, what he has to do is, when you go to the majors and you're in your first few years of time, you're making, I think, league minimum, which is $590,000 a year. He needs to sock away some of that and contract someone to run Martin Maldonado over.
Got it.
$720K.
Well, Nancy Kerrigan action. Yeah, I only know that because of All-Star Baseball, because min players are $720K. So you're looking for an old school Nancy Kerrigan situation.
Yeah. And I mean, you should do it like Nancy Kerrigan did and contract that work out. Yeah.
Tanya Harding did it to Nancy Kerrigan.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Tanya Harding. Because then, worst case scenario, you can sell the movie rights later,
and Margot Robbie plays you.
And that's a long-term viable strategy.
That's thinking long-term there. I
this
like it.
podcast is completely off the rails.
I was just about to say, let me get this straight.
I'm calling people out and advocating.
Roast you for shitting on your own team. You dumped on all of your Tout Wars league mates.
Yeah.
Now you're advocating for a potential hit, not a murder hit, but just an injury hit on Martin Maldonado. Do I have that straight?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just making sure I have it clear what you're doing today.
I mean, if I'm Yannier Diaz, I am turning Martin Maldonado into mechanic and throwing him straight under a bus.
Stop. Our next catcher, this was the guy I was actually battling. This was a Edward Olivares, Samad Taylor situation for me last week, where I had them at the same price, but the guy that I ended up getting was Diaz over Danny Jansen. I got Diaz for 9 unopposed. I had Jansen for 9 unopposed. He actually went for 4 to somebody else. First off, do you like that move, Diaz over Jansen, or would you have gone Jansen? I think last week you would have gone Jansen because
I think I would have gone Jansen, and I still think I would do that. And
they both had great weeks.
Yeah,
Jansen looks great. I don't regret getting Diaz, but I totally understand anybody that says they would have taken Jansen. He's hot, looking good again. Does he need to be rostered in all 1C formats now?
Yes, I think so.
Especially in light of the news that you just mentioned with Alejandro Kirk going on the IL.
Yeah, and Brandon
like that.
And Brandon Belt's on the IL too. So when Jansen isn't, when Jansen isn't in the lineup at catcher, he can DH. So I think, and the long-term prognosis of him getting playing time, I think is better.
And he's a great defender.
Yeah, so
Diaz can't defend.
And if one catcher is going to lose time once Kirk is back, I think it's got to be Kirk, because Jansen is such a good defender that I think he should be behind the plate more often. So
Kirk's just not hitting that well. We're going to talk about him in a moment in more detail. You could probably figure out what context that's going to be. But one other catcher, Henry Davis. Sorry, Andy Rodriguez, folks. This is why you don't stash a rookie catcher. But Henry Davis, the former 1-1 pick, leapfrogged Diaz after just 10 games at AAA, where he dominated, and he was dominating in AA as well. Henry Davis, he had 10 homers, 7 steals in 41 games at AA. Comes up to AAA, like I said, 10 games, rips off another homer, 2 steals, and a 142 WRC plus. Bingo, bango, bongo, he's up. Are we ready for the Henry Davis era? He's also dealing with a Zunino-esque situation of Austin Hedges being there, except Hedges didn't get kicked out the way the path was cleared for Naylor. So what do you think of Henry Davis for the Pirates? And let's go 2 catcher leagues, because I don't think he's 1 catcher viable anywhere yet.
Yeah, I don't think he is either. Again, I think he's very similar to Bo Naylor, where I think he can hit for power right away, and I think he can chip in some stolen bases. The question is, where does he play? Because, like you mentioned, they didn't, like DFA Austin Hedges. He's still there. Austin Hedges is a fantastic defender.
Are you familiar with what's happening? Sorry to interrupt you, because it's very pertinent to what you're saying here, though. Are you familiar with what's happening today on Monday?
I'm not.
Davis is starting in right field with Hedges keeping catcher.
Okay, so this is what I was about to get to, which
Sorry, should have let you finish then. My fault.
I wonder if he just starts DHing. But I mean, if he's playing right field with McCutchen DHing, like there's another way for him to get in the lineup.
Ooh, this was happening in the minors. 13 starts at right field. So this is not new.
Okay.
This has been an issue, not an issue. This has been a setup with Davis. Does that not make him better in a way? Because then he's the classic non-catching catcher.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Because if he's playing full time with catcher eligibility, now with them still having Jason DeLay on the roster, he may lose catcher eligibility for next year, but that's an issue for next year.
Kick that shit down the can. That can down the street.
And maybe he just at some point they just say we're going to give you enough games to make sure you're still honing those catcher skills, because I think they want him to be a catcher long term.
He was a 1-1. Yeah, I think that there's value there. Although I believe DeLay is also a pretty good catcher. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong on that. We know Hedges is one of the best in the game. So if Davis is playing outfield regularly, I think he does start to get a little 15-team 1-catcher potential because of what we've seen in the minors from him. So let's start there. 15-team 1-catcher situations rank Bo Naylor, Yainer Diaz, Danny Jansen, and Henry Davis. 15-team 1C.
Oh, God, that's really, really tough. I think I'm going...
There's going to be ties and everything, but just give us the 4 that you have there. You're probably not going to have much split amongst them.
Yeah, I think it's super, super close. So I think you make an argument for all these guys in just about any order. I'm going to go Jansen. I'm going to go Jansen, Davis, Naylor, Diaz. But like I said, I think you can move it around. I think for me, the fact that Davis is playing in the outfield and can potentially play every day gives him a really, really strong argument to being 1. I think I trust Jansen's bat to be better just because we've seen it.
He's got the track record over all 3 of them combined. Jansen
but if you were to tell me one of these guys is going to double the output of the rest of these guys, rest of the way, it's Davis.
You know what's intriguing? He's 7 for 3 at Double-A. Add it all together, it's 9 for 14 on the bases. I didn't know Davis to have any speed component, but maybe he's taking advantage of. I don't know if they have the bigger bases.
He's not supposed to be. He had a 30 speed grade on the process.
And have you noticed? Have you also noticed the patience uptick this year? He has a 17% walk rate. He was 8% last year. We're talking 2x on the walk rate here. Do you buy into that with Davis?
It's always so hard to tell when we see those gigantic jumps because we don't know how much of that is, we're teaching him to be more patient, or teams going, I'm not giving you anything to hit.
Exactly.
So
that's what I thought with Ellie. And I remember I cited that specifically. I said, I don't think this is real. I think this is people are afraid of him. But with 2 levels for Davis, and he's not as threatening of a hitter, although he's been hitting brilliantly this year. So maybe part of it is fear, but it is worth noting. 17% walk rate, a little bit of speed. I got to get him up there too. So I think I go Jansen. I think I might go Davis Diaz.
If you need a catcher in a 2-catcher league this weekend, isn't this the hitter you're going all in for? Are we going to see Ellie De La Cruz bids in NFBC this weekend in Fab?
Depends what he does. If he goes crazy. If there's a big week out of Davis that includes a couple steals as well, if he hits a homer, 2 steals with a 312 average or something, which isn't even crazy, not some 400 average. But if he just puts up a hell of a week with power and speed, and only one game at catcher or something, I think Davis bids could get pretty crazy. Because non-catching catcher, we know what that can do. We saw where Varsho's level was this year. And, of course, I'm not saying that Henry Davis is Varsho, but when you're not having to catch, that is such a fantasy boon. Let's talk.
He's facing 3 lefties too,
and Davis himself is a righty, right?
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
This
could be a really nice setup.
He's got Rich Hill, Braxton Garrett, and Jesus Luzardo this week. So like it's like he could go off, and then all of a sudden, like people are spending a ton of money.
What about shallow leagues? One catcher. Now, this is where I think we should bring in the potential cuts. Because we talked about Alejandro Kirk and his injury. Gabriel Moreno and MJ Melendez. All 3 guys that I saw the intrigue in. I was in on Kirk and Moreno myself. Not as much on Melendez, but I understood the intrigue. All 3 guys were hyped and expected to be great. None of them have been. Melendez is the 15th ranked catcher on the year. Moreno's 22nd. Kirk is 28th. Are you cutting any of them for one of these 4 in a 12 or shallower?
I would cut Kirk, especially because he's on the IL, and I would cut Moreno because with Carson Kelly back, the Diamondbacks have said they're going to split time. And so all of a sudden, and the rest of that offense is really, really good. I mean, they sent down Josh Rojas today because they need another outfielder, and they didn't have
stretch out his arm. Because he's pitched multiple times this year.
Oh, has he?
Your boy Josh Rojas is out there.
Not that Rojas has been very good or anything this year. Like he's been pretty mediocre, if not bad.
Yeah.
So like I totally
0 homers, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think I understand it, but like there's not going to be room for Moreno at the DH spot regularly. So, like, I think Moreno is a pretty easy cut for any of these guys.
I agree.
I still believe in Melendez. And he's another guy.
Find that to be fair, too.
He's another guy who's playing the outfield. So, like, he's getting to play every day. And the power-speed combination there is so tantalizing that I don't think I would drop Melendez. But I think the other guys, for sure. I kind of wish I dropped Tyler Stevenson, to be honest. And picked up Henry Davis in a non-NFBC league this Sunday. So
I can't go too hard against that. Obviously, people probably know that I love Tyler Stevenson, and
I do too.
Was hoping for a power surge this year. It has not come. He has a 115 ISO, which is really bad. So I don't disagree with you there.
The problem for Stevenson is Joey Votto's on his way back
today.
Oh, is he back today?
Today, batting 6th, yep.
And Christian Carcino-Strand's been playing the outfield. So, like, there's going to be less opportunities for Stevenson to, like, soak up first base or DH time with what's coming back or up for the Reds. So,
exactly.
I think I probably should have actually cut him for Davis.
I'm fine including him on this list of potential cuts in shallow leagues. I love Stevenson. I want parts of the Reds offense where I can get it. But these 4 catchers offer some real upside that put them in, at the very least, put them in Stevenson's grouping, if not ahead of him. So I think that's totally fair. What about I guess your ranking wouldn't really change in 2 catcher formats then. You would still go Jansen, Davis, Naylor, Diaz, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I have Diaz ahead of Naylor. Naylor's my 4. But again, the splits here are minimal. Pick up the one that's available for your league. And if you want to go Davis number 1 and try to shoot the moon because of this outfield playing time and what he's been doing as a 1-1, I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. All right, last bid here, the stash list. 3 guys that starting to get picked up in some leagues because people want to get the jump on them cheaply before they return from the IL. Eduardo Rodriguez, Oneil Cruz, and Grayson Rodriguez. I saw Grayson, of course, is in the minors. Eduardo Rodriguez and Oneil Cruz are on the IL. So even though Cruz is far away, I saw him getting picked up in main events. I actually put him at the end of my list. I needed somebody who could play, so I wasn't really interested in doing that. But I was like, if I miss out on these 15 guys, then I would take Cruz. I didn't get him. Somebody else did for $4. Were you in on an O'Neill Cruz stash right now? And if so, in the NFBC specifically, where you have no ILs, that's the. I'm going to make that a little bit of a narrow ask though, because with ILs it's easy, but with no ILs, are you ready to stash Cruz yet for like a 8 to 10 week period, perhaps?
I put him on my list in a couple leagues where like I didn't really have injury issues, or I was able to say like, oh well, I'm gonna cut X player that went on the IL because he's out for 4 to 6 weeks, and and he's not nearly as talented as O'Neill Cruz. But for the most part, no. I just, if the Pirates continue doing what they're doing and they're in the playoff hunt in 8 weeks, then yeah, sure, maybe they decide they're going to try to make sure O'Neill Cruz is, back by the end of the season. But there's also a really good chance that the Pirates fade, that a team in that division goes on a hot stretch, like the Brewers or even the Cardinals.
Or even the fucking Cardinals, yeah.
And all of a sudden we get to mid-August and the Pirates aren't really a playoff contender. They're 6 games out of the last wild card spot or something like that. And they go, we're just going to shut O'Neill Cruz down for the season. Yeah. And now you've been holding on to that roster spot, which you could have been used to churn a different position. And you've just wasted that time. So I understand it, but you need to have a really, really healthy team, no other stashes, and some pretty darn good and flexible, roster spots on your bench. So in order to be able to do that,
that's where I'd want to be too. And I don't have that. Like Cruz, I've talked all season about my offensive woes, and obviously getting somebody like O'Neill Cruz would be great, even for a month and a half if that's what he ends up being. But it's such an unknown right now that I just couldn't see myself doing it. Now the guy who did it won the main event last year, Bob Kramer told us. So I'm not here.
I hear he's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah, and he paid $4, so it's not going to kill him. I think the part where it could hurt him is the part you're talking about. I think he's smart enough to not let this happen. But if holding that roster spot was preventing him from making moves, by the way, he's in the exact same situation as me. We are dead even at 19 offensive points. So he's thinking the same thing. Where can I get a real offensive jump start? O'Neill Cruz down the line. So,
but I mean, the problem with I think that is you are already so far behind. Or are you putting yourself farther behind
by not
having that spot you can optimize on those Friday switches? Because I think that's where. That's so, fair. I respect Bob, and he is a better player than me. He proved it last year, but I don't know that is the way you build yourself out of an offensive hole.
He's got some flexibility with some guys. We're not going to go over his whole team, but I see some flexibility where he can work things. And again, based on his skill, which is very high, I trust him to cut bait on that if he needs to down the line and not let it hamstring him. These other two, a bit more appealing to me. Eduardo Rodriguez threw a bullpen on Friday, so I wasn't surprised to see him getting picked up in a bunch of leagues as he works back from that finger. Maybe he can beat the timetable. Was Eduardo Rodriguez of any interest to you after the bullpen on Friday at Target Field?
Another guy that I put in for, like, he was like 3rd or 4th on my list for pitchers. But everywhere where I put in for him, that's where I got my closers. And so I ended up not getting him. But I totally understand why people are. He was really, really good prior to getting hurt. I do think that there was going to be some just natural regression because he was getting super lucky in some regards. But, yeah, I mean, the waiver wire, especially in 15-team leagues right now, are so barren for pitchers. I mean, just unbelievable. And one of the reasons
unless you want to pay high end, right? It's like the prospect of the week for $80 gazillion or nothing is what it seems to be most.
Well, and that's the thing. So when you've got 15 owners going in for those 1 or 2 guys, like you're either overpaying or you're just saying, I'm going to take what's left on the scrap heap. Yeah. Like I was making decisions like, oh, is Trevor Williams a good pickup this week? Or like,
no.
And that's where I said, like, screw it. Instead of starting, 6 starters, I'm gonna go a little heavier on the closers
Pop another closer
and see what happens, and I'll make more adjustments later on. But at least I know I'll be getting some innings that hopefully don't murder me the way Jack Flaherty and Josiah Gray have murdered me. Thankfully I haven't had to watch it for a little while because my app froze, and it's just a picture of I think Paul DeJong striking out, just That's frozen funny. On my TV screen right now. Actually, really I don't know. Is that Paul DeJong? He's number
Flaherty,
11.
by the way, went 6. He's on the hook for the dub right now. So as bad as it was to give up those 5 runs in the first 2 innings.
But that the Cardinals bullpen are gonna what's gonna happen is Jordan Hicks is gonna come in and blow it, and I'm gonna get doubly smoked after picking up Jordan Hicks everywhere. So
that would be such a pain in the ass.
I'm taking a picture real quick right now of
your frozen
screen of Paul DeJong, just like, it's been
funny
frozen
that it's
there.
him too, because
what inning are we in? Because it says middle 6 right now.
It's top 7 now with 2 outs.
Yeah, so it's been frozen for a little while.
That's funny. Carl Edwards Jr. has a 2-1 count to Lars Nootbaar. Our last guy is Grayson Rodriguez, who's in the minors working at AAA and dominating. 3 straight quality starts. 10 and 11 strikeouts in the last 2. He was held in a lot of spots, but I did start to see him trickle up a decent bit, particularly in some of the shallower formats. Are you trying to stash Grayson Rodriguez where available?
Absolutely. I wrote an article over the weekend about kind of the baby Orioles and all the guys in AAA right now that I would hope are coming up pretty soon. And Grayson Rodriguez is one of those guys. He's been fantastic in AAA. I think they should give him a shot. I mean, I think they're rolling out like Cole Irvin and guys like that right now still in that rotation.
The thing of it is, though, like they traded for him. They have some interest in Cole Irvin. Yeah, he's got a 7.66 ERA, but like his Sierra says, I mean, it's 4.66, which isn't great. And Grayson's better. I'm not making the case that he isn't, but I wonder if the team's going to lean on the veteran lefty and Irvin to get some innings and then use Grayson as more of a trade acquisition call-up. Like call him up more in July and run him for the last half of the season there, as opposed to having to deal with the innings issues that might come to be. Now, of course, if they're starting him 6 innings every time out in AAA, well, then you're not saving the innings. They still count the same in AAA. So there would be a situation where if you're just going to give him 6 every time out in AAA, you might as well call him up.
And I mean, Dean Kremer doesn't need to be like rolling out in this rotation every 5 days. Like
again, I think that comes back to the innings situation, because he's been pretty mediocre too. But I think they just want some of these veterans to eat up the innings and then turn to Grayson down the stretch more, again, like a July call-up, and let him carry it to the finish line there, especially because they're doing pretty well without him, right? They're sitting in second at 43 and 25. So I don't know. That said, I still advocate holding Grayson because it takes – we don't know. We're guessing. And he could be called up on a dime. In fact, the next injury to the pitching, I would think he would be immediately called up, right? He has to be the first guy up from an injury standpoint.
Yeah, but it's not – I mean, to me, it's like – you're wasting the bullets in AAA. Like it's not like they're like saying like, oh, we're only going to throw you, 4 innings each outing to keep you fresh. So you got all these innings at the end of the season. He's been going every 5 days.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Has it been every 5th?
Yeah, he pitched on the 3rd, the 9th, and the 15th, and done 6 innings each time.
Yeah, they're not saving anything doing that. Then they're really not.
So maybe there's something he's working on, and like. I don't think the Orioles are tanking. Like, they're clearly trying right now. So, like, and it is a smart organization, right? The guy who runs the Orioles used to run the Astros. Like, they know what they're doing. So, like, there's a reason why he's down there. Mm-hmm. And it's a reason maybe I don't understand, but I don't need to understand because I'm a fantasy baseball writer and podcaster and but
his last 5 before he got sent out, he was a nightmare. Grayson Rodriguez gave up 11 homers in those starts. So they figure, okay, you got to go down, you got to figure it out. But these last 3 starts, or these 3 starts in AAA, have said, like, okay, I'm figuring it out. By the way,
and the last 2 have really been figuring out because
10 and 11 punchies.
Yeah, and only 3 walks in the last 2 starts. He's given up 2 home runs in those starts, but like he's attacking the zone. He's getting a lot of strikeouts. Like. I think he's going to be back up quickly because I do think this is a team that wants to compete right now and has the bullets to do it. And they have spent zero money doing this. Imagine if they go on a spending spree next year, like,
or at the deadline and maybe pick up a big piece that way. Like they've got prospects for days. They've got.
Here's the thing, like this is like I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think Ohtani wants to play in a place like Baltimore. But they've got money to spend, and they could, like, there was talk that they could make like the type of deal that like to Cabrera or someone like that this last season where they completely overspend but do it just to like make their team that much better.
Yeah.
If any team could do it, the Orioles have like no money on the books pretty much, and because all their guys are pretty much in ARB.
That's the thing. Just so many young guys on rookie deals or pre-ARB or currently on ARB. And so they're in a really, really good position.
And like I said, I don't think Ohtani would do it because Ohtani gave up a crap ton of money to come early.
True.
And so like I think he really wants to go to a place where he can win and be comfortable. Yeah. And be an icon. I think he wants to be the guy that people look at 30 years from now and go, well, that was the greatest player of that generation. But if it was about money, I think the Orioles could make a play.
In fairness, he will be that wherever he goes, whether that be Baltimore or elsewhere. But I can see him going to a more of a high-profile team where he can kind of get off-the-field ventures going and advertising and all that just to maximize his value because he's a god. He's the best player in the universe.
Yeah.
All right, so that's Grayson Rodriguez. I think if they could map it out perfectly and like turn off injuries, they would hold him till the All-Star break and then go from there down in AAA. But I think next injury, Rodriguez has to come up. So we'll keep tabs on that. But that's going to do it. And again, little bit of a different format. Thank you for the comment, whoever sent it. I do think it was getting stale with just the two steps and the pickups, just Monday, Friday, Monday, Friday. This will be a more unique way to get players discussed, and hopefully people enjoy that. But Justin, hopefully the Rats don't get you. Go get them. And if the Rats don't get you, your NFBC or your Tout Lawyers league mates might. So be careful.
Yeah. I hope everybody who like listens to this episode listens to the end. But I love the guys in that Tout Wars league.
Anybody who knows you knows you.
Yeah, like, and I hope I know I'm gonna get messages.
Well,
maybe I'll get. Yeah.
They need to know that you're trying to be funny and being silly.
I just want to trade. Just someone please trade with me. Like, just
Justin is down to trade.
I will. So. You can have like one of those catchers for nothing. Like, but I need power. God damn it. And ratios.
Yeah, you just don't want to cut them.
I'm not going to cut. I will hold them till the end if I have to.
You're nothing if not stubborn.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll talk later this week. Oh, actually, we'll have to talk offline. We have to reschedule. I'll be gone on Friday. We're going on a road trip. So we'll figure out something.
We'll do something Thursday if you're free.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll figure out Thursday then. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Talk to you later, Justin.
Take it easy.